I raised my daughter to be strong. Maybe that was my mistake. My name is Dorothy Mae Johnson, and I'm 73 years old. I've lived in this house for 47 years. Bought it with my late husband Robert back in 1977 when black families were just starting to be able to buy in this neighborhood. When the white folks were moving out and we were moving in, trying to build something for our children. Robert worked 2 jobs to afford the down payment. I cleaned houses during the day and took in sewing at night. We saved every penny, went without new clothes, without vacations, without luxuries, all so we could own something, so our children could inherit something, so they'd have a foundation we never had. This house wasn't much when we bought it. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in. But it was ours. The first thing anyone in either of our families had ever owned besides the clothes on our backs. Robert died 11 years ago. Stroke took him quick. One day he was laughing at the dinner table. The next day he was gone, just like that. 42 years of marriage ended between one breath and the next. After he passed, this house became everything to me. Every room held his memory. The porch where he'd sit after work, too tired to move but always smiling when I brought him sweet tea. The kitchen where he'd sneak up behind me while I was cooking and kiss my neck. The bedroom where we'd shared whispers and dreams and plans for a future we thought we'd have more time to live. I have 3 children. Marcus, my oldest at 51, Teresa, my middle child at 48, and Crystal, my baby at 45. Marcus lives in Atlanta with his family. Good job, good wife, good kids. He calls every Sunday, visits twice a year. He's busy with his own life, but he's always been respectful, always been grateful. Teresa is in Houston. She's a nurse, working night shifts, raising her grandbaby because her daughter got caught up in drugs. Teresa's tired all the time, but she never complains, never asks for anything, just does what needs to be done. Then there's Crystal. Crystal was always different from the other 2. From the time she was little, she wanted more. Not just more things, more attention, more praise, more acknowledgement that she was special. She was the baby, and maybe I spoiled her. Maybe I gave her too much, expected too little. When she was young, that ambition seemed like a good thing. She was going to be somebody, she'd say, going to make something of herself, going to have the life I never had. She went to college, first in our family to go. We were so proud. Robert worked overtime for 4 years to help pay for it. I took on extra sewing jobs, stayed up until 2 in the morning hemming dresses and taking in pants, just to send her a little extra money each month. She graduated with a business degree, got a good job at a marketing firm, started making more money than Robert and I had ever seen. She bought a nice car, moved into a fancy apartment, started wearing clothes that cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. She also started acting like she was better than where she came from. Little comments at first about how simple our house was, how outdated everything looked, how we should really update this or that, how it was embarrassing when her friends came over. I'd just smile and nod, didn't argue. She was young, I told myself. Young people always think they know better. She'd grow out of it. But she didn't grow out of it. She grew into it. After Robert died, Crystal started coming around more. At first, I thought it was because she missed her father, because she wanted to make sure I was okay. I was grateful. Loneliness is a heavy thing when you've spent 42 years sleeping next to someone and suddenly the bed is empty. She'd come over every week, sometimes twice a week. We'd have coffee, talk about her job, her life, her plans. She seemed interested in the house, asked questions about the deed, about the mortgage, which had been paid off for 15 years, about my will, about what I planned to do with the property. "You're not getting any younger, Mama," she'd say, her voice dripping with concern that felt rehearsed. "You need to think about the future, about what happens to this house when you're gone." "I'm not planning on going anywhere anytime soon," I'd tell her. "I know, Mama, I know, but we should be prepared. It's the responsible thing to do." Responsible. She loved that word. Made everything sound so sensible, so practical, so necessary. 6 months after Robert died, Crystal brought me papers. "I've been talking to a lawyer," she said. spreading documents across my kitchen table. The same table where Robert and I had shared thousands of meals, where we'd helped our children with homework, where we'd counted pennies and planned budgets and dreamed small dreams that felt enormous to us. A lawyer, for what? For estate planning, Mama. You need to have your affairs in order. This house needs to be in a trust so when you pass, it doesn't get caught up in probate. It's the smart thing to do. I didn't know much about trusts or probate or estate planning. Robert had always handled the financial paperwork. I paid the bills, managed the household money, but the big stuff, that was his domain. What do I need to do? I asked. Just sign here. She pointed to several places marked with little colored tabs. It puts the house in a trust. You'll still live here, still own it, but legally it'll be protected. For your children, for your legacy. Legacy, another word she used a lot, made everything sound important, meaningful, bigger than it was. I should have read those papers more carefully. Should have taken them to my own lawyer. Should have asked Marcus or Teresa what they thought. Should have trusted the small voice in the back of my mind that whispered something wasn't right. But I didn't. I trusted my daughter. Trusted that she had my best interests at heart. Trusted that blood meant something. That raising her, sacrificing for her, loving her meant she'd never betray me. I signed the papers. Crystal took them, folded them carefully, put them in her designer purse. She kissed my cheek. You did the right thing, Mama. This is going to protect you, protect all of us. Life went on. I kept living in my house, tending my small garden in the backyard, attending church on Sundays, playing bid whist with my friends on Tuesday afternoons. Crystal kept visiting, though less frequently now. Maybe once every 2 weeks instead of twice a week. Then, about 8 months after I signed those papers, things started changing. Crystal began making suggestions. Mama, you should really think about getting a reverse mortgage. You could get cash out of this house, enjoy your retirement. I don't need cash, I'd say. I have my Social Security, Robert's pension, I'm fine. But you could travel, buy nice things, live a little instead of just existing. I didn't want to travel. I wanted to stay in my house, in my neighborhood, near my church and my friends and my memories. Then she started talking about assisted living. Mama, you're getting older. What if you fall? What if something happens and nobody's here to help you? Wouldn't you feel safer in a place with nurses, with people around? I'm 73, not 93, I said, my voice sharper than usual. I can take care of myself just fine. I'm just worried about you, she'd say, but her worry felt calculated, rehearsed, like lines in a play she'd practiced. Then came the day that changed everything. I came home from church on a Sunday morning, had been at service and then stayed for coffee hour, catching up with Sister Patricia about her grandson's wedding. I was in a good mood, humming a hymn as I walked up my front steps. My key didn't work. I tried it again, thinking maybe I was just tired, not turning it right. Still nothing. That's when I noticed the lock looked different, shinier, newer. The door opened. Crystal stood there, not surprised to see me, not apologetic, just waiting, like she'd been expecting this moment. Behind her, I could see furniture. New furniture. Not my old couch that Robert and I had bought at a thrift store and reupholstered together. Not my coffee table with the scratches from where the grandkids had colored too hard. New, expensive-looking furniture that didn't belong to me. Mama, she said, her voice calm, controlled. We need to talk. Why doesn't my key work? I asked. What's going on? Come in, she stepped aside. Let's sit down. I walked into my own house feeling like a stranger. Everything looked different. My family photos were gone from the walls. My knickknacks, the small treasures I'd collected over decades, were nowhere to be seen. Even the smell was different, some expensive candle scent instead of the lavender sachets I always kept around. Where's my furniture? Where are my things? I put them in storage, Crystal said, sitting down on the new couch like she owned the place, which I was about to find out she did. For safekeeping. Safekeeping. Crystal, what is going on? She pulled out papers. Different papers from the ones I'd signed months ago, but with some of the same legal language, the same official-looking headers. "When you signed the trust documents, you transferred ownership of the house to me," she said, her voice taking on that patient, explaining to a child tone I'd come to hate. "It was the smart thing to do, remember, for estate planning purposes." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about? You said it was still my house. You said I'd still own it." "You signed it over to me, Mama. It's legally mine now. I've decided to move in. This house is worth a lot of money now. The neighborhood's gentrified, property values have tripled. I can't afford to buy a house like this on the open market, and since you signed it over to me anyway." "I didn't sign it over to you." My voice was rising, panic setting in. "You said it was for a trust, for all 3 of you kids, for after I died. The papers you signed transferred ownership to me specifically. I'm sorry if you misunderstood, but it's legal. I have the deed. The house is mine." I felt like the floor was disappearing beneath my feet. "You tricked me. You lied to me." "I didn't lie," she said, and the coldness in her voice chilled me to my bones. "I gave you papers to sign. You signed them without reading them. That's not my fault. I'm your mother. And I'm grateful for everything you did for me," she said, standing up. "Which is why I'm not putting you out on the street. I found you a nice senior living facility. 1-bedroom apartment, meals included, activities, transportation to doctor's appointments. You'll be comfortable there." "I don't want to be comfortable there. I want to be in my home, the home your father and I worked our whole lives to buy, the home we built for our family." "This is what's best," she said firmly. "You're getting older, you can't maintain this house. You shouldn't be living alone. This is the responsible decision." Responsible, that word again. I looked at my daughter, this woman I'd carried in my body, nursed at my breast, rocked to sleep through countless nights. This woman I'd sacrificed for, worked myself to exhaustion for, loved with everything I had. And she looked back at me like I was an obstacle to be managed, a problem to be solved, an inconvenience standing between her and what she wanted. "You have a week to get your personal items," she said. "I've already paid the first month at Sunset Gardens. It's a good facility, Mama. You should be grateful." Grateful. I should be grateful that my own daughter had stolen my house, had lied to me, manipulated me, used my trust and my grief against me, had taken the one thing I had left of my husband, my life, my history. I walked out of that house, my house that wasn't my house anymore, and I didn't look back. Couldn't look back. If I had, I might have broken down completely, and I refused to give her that satisfaction. I spent that first night at Teresa's house in Houston. I called her from the street corner, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone, told her what happened. She went silent for a long moment, then said in that tired, steady voice of hers, "Get on a bus, Mama. Come here. We'll figure this out." The bus ride took 6 hours. 6 hours to sit with what had just happened. 6 hours to replay every conversation with Crystal, every paper I'd signed, every warning sign I'd ignored. 6 hours to feel the full weight of a betrayal so deep it made my chest physically ache. Teresa picked me up at the station, took one look at my face and wrapped me in her arms right there in the parking lot. Didn't ask questions. Didn't say, "I told you so," even though she'd warned me years ago that Crystal was getting too big for her britches. Just held me while I cried like I hadn't cried since Robert died. We got to her small apartment, a 2-bedroom she shared with her 4-year-old granddaughter Amia. Teresa gave me her bedroom, said she'd sleep on the couch. I tried to argue, but she wouldn't hear it. That night, lying in Teresa's bed, staring at a ceiling that wasn't mine, I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about my house, about Crystal walking through rooms that held 47 years of my life like they were hers. Sleeping in the bedroom where Robert and I had loved each other, fought with each other, grown old together. The next morning, Teresa called Marcus, put him on speaker phone. "She did what?" Marcus's voice came through the phone loud enough that Teresa had to pull it away from her ear. "Crystal took the house? How? Mama, what papers did you sign?" I told him everything. About the trust Crystal said she was setting up, about the lawyer she claimed to have consulted, about how I'd trusted my own daughter and signed without reading carefully. "We need to get a lawyer," Marcus said immediately. "This can't be legal. There has to be something called undue influence or elder abuse or fraud." "I'm not elderly," I interrupted, my pride stinging. "And I signed the papers willingly. I was stupid." "You weren't stupid, Mama," Teresa said softly. "You trusted your child. That's not stupid. That's what mothers do." But it felt stupid. Felt like I'd been a fool. Felt like I'd handed my daughter the knife and then turned my back so she could stab me with it. Marcus flew in from Atlanta 2 days later. Came straight from the airport to Teresa's apartment with his briefcase and his lawyer friend from college who specialized in real estate law. The lawyer, a serious young man named Kenneth, reviewed copies of the papers I'd signed. Crystal had given me one set, which I'd stuck in a drawer and never looked at again. Kenneth read through them slowly, his face getting grimmer with each page. "This is bad," he finally said. "These papers do transfer full ownership of the property to Crystal Johnson. There's a clause here that allows you to remain on the property at the discretion of the new owner. But that's it. Legally, she owns the house." "But Mama didn't know what she was signing," Marcus argued. "Crystal told her it was something else. That's fraud." "It would be fraud if we could prove Crystal explicitly lied about what the documents said," Kenneth explained. "But if Crystal's defense is that she explained it and your mother simply didn't understand or didn't read carefully." He trailed off, the implication clear. "So there's nothing we can do." Teresa's voice was tight with anger. "I didn't say that," Kenneth said. "There are a few potential avenues. We could argue undue influence, that Crystal used her relationship and your mother's grief to manipulate her into signing. We could argue that your mother lacked mental capacity at the time of signing due to grief and stress. We could potentially argue that the consideration was inadequate, that your mother gave away a valuable asset for nothing in return." "What are the chances?" I asked quietly. Kenneth hesitated. "Honestly, maybe 30%. These cases are hard to win. The law generally assumes that adults who sign contracts understand what they're signing. And your mother." He looked at me with sympathy. "You're clearly competent, sharp as a tack. That works against us in terms of the capacity argument." "So my own competence means I can't prove I was manipulated." The irony wasn't lost on me. "Essentially, yes. We filed a lawsuit anyway. Marcus insisted on paying for it, wouldn't let me or Teresa contribute a dime. 'You raised us, Mama,' he said. 'You and Daddy worked yourselves to the bone for us. This is the least I can do.' The lawsuit meant I had to stay in Houston. Couldn't go back to my neighborhood, my church, my friends. Had to live out of a suitcase in Teresa's apartment, sleeping in a bedroom that wasn't mine, in a city that wasn't home. Teresa never complained, never once made me feel like a burden, even though I knew I was. Her apartment was small, money was tight, and here I was taking up space and resources. I tried to help where I could, cooking meals, watching Amia, keeping the place clean. But I felt like a ghost, like I was haunting someone else's life because I didn't have one of my own anymore. Crystal didn't call, didn't text, didn't reach out at all. It was like I'd ceased to exist for her the moment she got what she wanted. Marcus called her, left voicemails, sent texts demanding she talk to him. Finally, she responded with a text that said, "I did nothing wrong. Mama signed the papers willingly. If you want to waste money on a lawsuit, that's your choice. You'll lose." Marcus called me immediately, reading the text out loud, his voice shaking with rage. "She doesn't even care, Mama. She doesn't even feel bad." That was what hurt most. Not the house, though losing it felt like losing Robert all over again. Not the money or the betrayal or the legal battle. But the fact that my daughter, my baby, the child I'd nursed through colic and walked through nightmares and cheered for at every school play, felt nothing. The lawsuit crawled forward at the pace all legal things do. Depositions, document requests, motions, words like discovery and interrogatories that I had to learn the meaning of. During Crystal's deposition, I sat in the lawyer's conference room and watched her on a video screen. She'd refused to travel to Houston, insisted on doing it remotely from her lawyer's office. She looked good, hair done professionally, makeup perfect, wearing a suit that probably cost more than I used to make in a month. She sat there calm and composed while Kenneth asked her questions. Did you tell your mother that these documents would allow her to continue living in the house? I told her the documents were for estate planning purposes, Crystal said smoothly. I explained that the house would be protected. Protected for whom? For the family. But the documents transfer ownership solely to you, not to all 3 siblings. Did you explain that to your mother? The documents were complex. I simplified the explanation for her benefit. Did you tell her explicitly that she was signing the house over to you personally? Crystal paused. I explained the documents were for a trust. Technically, I hold the property in trust for the family legacy. But legally, you own it outright. You can sell it, mortgage it, do anything you want with it. Correct. Legally, yes. And did you explain that to your mother? Another pause. My mother is an intelligent woman. She could have read the documents if she wanted to understand them fully. I watched her blame me, watched her make it my fault for trusting her, for not reading carefully enough, for being the kind of mother who believed her daughter wouldn't betray her. Kenneth pressed harder. Your mother had just lost her husband 6 months before you brought her these documents. Would you say she was in a vulnerable emotional state? My mother was grieving, yes. And you used that vulnerability to convince her to sign over her house. Objection, Crystal's lawyer interrupted. Argumentative. I'll rephrase, Kenneth said. Did you consider your mother's emotional state when you asked her to sign these documents? I considered that she needed help managing her affairs, Crystal said. That she was alone and needed family to step in and help her make good decisions. Good decisions, like signing away the house she and my husband had worked their whole lives to buy. The deposition went on for 3 hours. I watched my daughter lie in ways that were technically truthful. Watched her twist the narrative to make herself the hero and me the foolish old woman who needed to be rescued from my own incompetence. When it was over, Kenneth turned off the screen and looked at me with sympathy. She's good, he admitted. She's saying just enough truth mixed with omission that it's hard to prove outright fraud. So we're going to lose, I said. It wasn't a question. I didn't say that, but it's going to be an uphill battle. We battled for 8 months, through motions and counter-motions, through arguments and rebuttals, through days when I thought maybe I should just give up, let her have the house, stop fighting a fight I was probably going to lose anyway. But Marcus wouldn't let me quit. This is wrong, Mama, he'd say. What she did is wrong, and even if the law doesn't see it that way, we can't just let her get away with it. Teresa agreed. Daddy worked too hard for that house, she said. You both did. She can't just steal 47 years of your life and face no consequences. The trial was set for September. 3 days in court where we'd present our case and Crystal would present hers, and a judge would decide who was telling the truth. I prepared myself to lose, tried to make peace with it, tried to tell myself that a house was just a building, just wood and brick and memories that I could carry with me anywhere. But I couldn't make myself believe it. That house wasn't just a building. It was proof that Robert and I had existed, had mattered, had built something. It was our legacy, and Crystal had taken it like it meant nothing. 2 weeks before the trial, something happened that changed everything. I got a call from a woman named Patricia Lewis. She said she'd heard about my case through a mutual friend at my old church. Said she had information I might need. I work at the law firm Crystal used to draw up those documents, Patricia said. Worked there, I should say. I don't anymore. I quit after I found out what happened. My heart started beating faster. What do you mean? Crystal came to our firm specifically asking for documents that would transfer property while appearing to be something else. She told the lawyer, my former boss, that her mother was getting dementia and needed to sign over the house before she became incompetent. She said you'd be resistant if you knew what you were really signing, so the documents needed to be worded in a way that sounded protective, but legally gave her everything. She told them I had dementia. I felt sick. Yes, she lied to the lawyers, made you sound incompetent when you weren't, and they drafted the documents based on that false information. I found the notes in the file. I made copies before I quit. Why did you quit? Because when I found out your daughter had lied, that you were perfectly competent and had been tricked, I told my boss we needed to report it. He said it wasn't our problem, that Crystal was the client and we represented her interests. I couldn't work for someone like that, so I left. Why are you telling me this now? Because what she did was wrong, and those notes prove she planned the whole thing. Prove she deliberately misrepresented the situation to get documents that would trick you. That's fraud, Mrs. Johnson. Real, provable fraud. I gave her Kenneth's information. She sent him the files that same day. Internal notes from Crystal's meetings with the lawyer. Emails where she explicitly stated she needed documents her mother wouldn't fully understand. Evidence that this wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a calculated plan. Kenneth called me that night, his voice excited in a way I hadn't heard before. This changes everything. With these documents, we can prove intentional fraud. We can prove she deliberately deceived you. This is exactly what we needed. The trial started on a Tuesday morning. The courthouse was old, with marble floors and wooden benches that had seen decades of human drama play out within their confines. Crystal showed up in another expensive suit, sat at the defendant's table with her lawyer looking confident, prepared, certain of victory. She glanced at me once. Our eyes met across the courtroom. I searched her face for something, remorse, guilt, love, anything that looked like my daughter was still in there somewhere. I saw nothing. Her face was blank, like I was a stranger, like she'd never nursed at my breast or fallen asleep in my arms or called me Mama in a voice full of trust and love. Kenneth presented our case methodically, showed the timeline of Robert's death, of my grief, of Crystal's sudden interest in helping with my affairs, presented the papers I'd signed, and highlighted the differences between what Crystal had said they were and what they actually did. Then he dropped the bomb. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce evidence that shows this was not a misunderstanding or a case of the plaintiff failing to read carefully. This was deliberate, calculated fraud. He presented Patricia's documents, the notes, the emails, Crystal's own words describing how she needed documents her mother wouldn't fully understand, so she could get the house before Mother got too old and incompetent. I watched Crystal's face as Kenneth read her emails aloud, watched her confident expression crack, watched her lawyer lean over and whisper urgently in her ear, watched her realize that her perfect plan had a witness she hadn't accounted for. The judge read through the documents carefully, his face getting sterner with each page. These are notes from the defendant's own attorney. Yes, Your Honor. Notes that show Ms. Crystal Johnson explicitly sought legal documents designed to deceive her mother, that she misrepresented her mother's mental state to obtain those documents, that this was premeditated fraud. Crystal's lawyer asked for a recess. The judge granted it. For 30 minutes, I sat in the hallway watching Crystal and her lawyer have an intense, whispered argument. She kept shaking her head. He kept pointing at papers, his face grim. When we returned to the courtroom, Crystal's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, in light of the evidence presented, my client would like to discuss a settlement. Just like that, Crystal's certainty crumbled. Just like that, the daughter who'd looked at me like I was nothing realized she might actually face consequences for what she'd done. The settlement negotiations took 2 hours in a conference room. Crystal's lawyer made the first offer. I could have the house back, but I'd have to reimburse Crystal for the improvements she'd made, the new furniture, the renovations she'd started. Kenneth laughed in his face. Your client committed fraud. She's lucky we're discussing settlement instead of criminal charges. Try again. The final settlement was this. Crystal would sign the house back over to me immediately. She would pay for all legal fees, mine and hers. She would publicly apologize for what she'd done, and she would forfeit any claim to the property in my will. Marcus and Teresa would inherit the house equally when I died. Crystal would get nothing. Do you agree to these terms? The mediator asked me. I looked at Crystal. She wouldn't meet my eyes, just sat there staring at the table, her jaw tight, her hands clenched into fists. I agree, I said, on one condition. Everyone looked at me. I want to know why, I said, looking directly at my daughter. I want you to look at me and tell me why you did this, why you betrayed me, why you lied to me, why you took the one thing I had left of your father. Crystal's lawyer started to object, but she held up her hand to stop him. For the first time since this whole thing started, she actually looked at me. Because I deserved it, she said, her voice hard. Because I was the one who went to college, the one who made something of myself, the one who actually succeeded instead of just settling for mediocrity. That house is worth $500,000 now, and you were just going to leave it moldering away while you grew old and died in it. It was wasted on you. The words hit like slaps, each one landing with precision, designed to hurt. I worked my whole life for that house, I said quietly. Your father worked himself into an early grave for it. We sacrificed everything so our children would have more than we did. And you think that makes it yours? You think your college degree that we paid for, your success that we made possible, gives you the right to steal from the people who gave you everything? You would have left it to all three of us anyway, Crystal said. I just took my share early. Your share was 1/3, Marcus said, speaking for the first time. His voice was shaking with rage. 1/3, Crystal, not everything. And you weren't supposed to get it by stealing it from our mother while she was grieving our father. I didn't steal it. She signed it over. Because you lied to her, Teresa's voice cracked. Because you manipulated her. Because you're a selfish, greedy person who doesn't care about anyone but yourself. The mediator intervened before it could escalate further. Let's stay focused on the settlement terms. Mrs. Johnson, do you agree to the terms as stated? I looked at Crystal one more time, at this stranger wearing my daughter's face. This person I'd carried, raised, loved, sacrificed for. This person who thought success meant taking what wasn't yours. Who thought ambition justified betrayal. Who thought her mother's love and trust were things to be exploited rather than honored. I agree, I said. And I want it stated clearly. Crystal Johnson is no longer welcome in my home. She is no longer part of my will. As far as I'm concerned, she's no longer my daughter. Crystal's face finally showed emotion. Shock, hurt, anger. You can't disown me, I'm your child. You disowned yourself, I said, when you chose a house over your mother. The papers were signed 3 days later. Crystal transferred the deed back to my name. Her lawyer handed over a cashier's check for the legal fees, $47,000. Nearly $50,000 my son had spent fighting to get back what never should have been taken in the first place. I went back to my house on a Thursday morning. Marcus and Teresa came with me. We stood on the sidewalk for a moment, just looking at it. It looked different. Crystal had repainted it a trendy gray instead of the warm yellow Robert and I had chosen. New porch, modern light fixtures. She tried to erase us from our own home. We can change it back, Marcus said. Make it look the way you remember. I shook my head. It'll never look the way I remember. Too much has happened. Inside was worse. Crystal had gotten rid of almost everything. The walls were bare, no family photos, no paintings, no children's handprints in frames. The kitchen table where we'd eaten thousands of meals, replaced with a cold glass thing. The couch where Robert and I had sat every evening, gone, replaced with a leather sectional that belonged in a showroom, not a home. Our bedroom, the room where Robert and I had loved each other, shared dreams, built our life. Crystal had painted it stark white, removed our old bed, put in a modern platform bed with harsh lines. I stood in the doorway and couldn't make myself enter. It felt violated. We can fix this, Teresa said gently. Bring back your furniture from storage, repaint, make it yours again. Can we? I asked. Or will I just be living in the place where my daughter betrayed me? Marcus put his hand on my shoulder. Maybe we should sell it, Mama. Get you something new, somewhere without these memories. I thought about walking away, about letting Crystal's betrayal drive me out of my own home. No, I said firmly. She doesn't get to take this from me. Not the house Robert and I worked for, not the life we built. We spent the next 3 months reclaiming it. Crystal had put my furniture in storage, but she damaged some of it, deliberate damage. The kitchen table had deep gouges. The couch was slashed. Picture frames broken, glass shattered across Robert's face in our family photos. She did this on purpose, Teresa said, holding up the damaged photo. She was angry she had to give the house back. I looked at the destruction and felt something shift inside me. Not quite anger anymore. Something colder, determination. Fix what can be fixed, I said. Replace what can't. She doesn't get to destroy 47 years of my life. Marcus hired people to help. Painters, contractors, movers. We hunted through estate sales for furniture similar to what had been destroyed. It took time and money Marcus insisted on spending. You and Daddy paid for my college, he said. This is me paying you back. Slowly, the house began to look like home again. Not exactly the same. We couldn't perfectly recreate 47 years, but similar enough that I could walk through rooms and see echoes of what had been. The hardest part wasn't the physical restoration. It was the emotional reconstruction. Every day I thought about Crystal, about how she'd handed me papers to sign, how she'd looked me in the eye and lied, how she'd told me I should be grateful. Friends from church would ask about her. At first, I didn't know what to say, didn't want to admit what had happened. Eventually, I told the truth. Crystal and I are no longer in contact. She did something I can't forgive. Word got around. People treated me differently, some with pity, some with judgment. What kind of mother raises a daughter who'd do such a thing? The judgment hurt almost as much as the betrayal. Marcus and Teresa visited often, filling the house with life again. Neither mentioned Crystal unless I brought her up first. They'd created a protective silence around her name. But I thought about her constantly, wondered if she ever felt guilty, if she ever woke up and realized what she'd done. 6 months after I moved back, Crystal called. I almost didn't answer. Hello. Mama, her voice was smaller, less confident. I wanted to tell you myself, I'm getting married. Congratulations, I said flatly. Silence. I also wanted to say, I've been thinking about what happened, about the house. I think maybe I handled it wrong. You think maybe you handled it wrong? I shouldn't have done it the way I did. I should have been clearer about what the papers meant. You should have not lied to me, I said. You should have not stolen from your own mother. I took something that wasn't mine to take. I used your trust against you, and I'm sorry. Sorry, the word I'd been waiting to hear. The word that should have made everything better. But it didn't. Are you sorry because you realized what you did was wrong? I asked. Or because you got caught? Because now you're getting married and you want me at your wedding? She didn't answer right away. I'm sorry because I hurt you. Isn't that enough? No, you didn't just hurt me, Crystal. You betrayed me in the deepest way possible. You used my grief over losing your father to manipulate me. You planned this deliberately, and you only stopped because you got caught. So what do you want from me? Her voice was rising. You want me to grovel? I said I'm sorry. What more do you want? I want my daughter back, I said, my voice breaking. The little girl who used to climb in my lap when she was scared, but that little girl is gone, and I don't know who you are anymore. I'm still me, Mama. I'm still your daughter. Are you? Because my daughter wouldn't have done what you did. My daughter would have valued her mother more than a house. She was crying now. I made a mistake. Can't you forgive me? Can't we move past this? I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if I can look at you without remembering how you told me I should be grateful for the nursing home you'd picked out. So what does that mean? You're just going to cut me out forever? You cut yourself out when you chose money over family. What about my wedding? Are you going to come? I thought about watching my daughter get married. Imagined her making vows about commitment and trust when she'd broken those very things with her own mother. I don't think so. Mama, please, I want you there. I need you there. You needed a house more than you needed me. You made your priorities clear. That's not fair. Fair, you want to talk about fair, after what you did. Silence. When she spoke again, her voice was cold. The vulnerability was gone. Fine, don't come to my wedding. Don't be part of my life, see if I care. I tried to apologize. If you want to hold a grudge forever, that's your choice. It is my choice, I said. just like stealing my house was yours." She hung up. I sat there feeling the weight of what had just happened. My daughter had asked for forgiveness, and I'd refused. Some people would say I was wrong. That family should forgive. That life is too short for grudges. Maybe they're right. Maybe I should show her grace and unconditional love. But I'm 73 years old, and I'm tired of being the bigger person. Tired of pretending that saying sorry erases deliberate betrayal. Crystal got married 4 months later. I wasn't there. Marcus went, said he felt obligated. Teresa refused. I'm not going to celebrate someone who tried to make our mother homeless. Marcus said it was beautiful, expensive, everything perfect and polished. Crystal asked about me. When Marcus said I hadn't changed my mind, she just nodded and moved on, like my absence was a minor inconvenience. A year has passed. I'm 74 now, still living in the house Robert and I bought, still going to church on Sundays. Life goes on, even after betrayal. I've updated my will. Marcus and Teresa inherit the house equally. Crystal gets nothing, not out of spite, but because this house goes to the children who valued family more than property. Sometimes I wonder if I'm being too harsh, if I should reach out. But then I remember standing in the street while she told me I should be grateful. Remember signing papers while she lied to my face. And I remember that forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation. I can forgive someone and still choose not to have them in my life. Crystal sends cards sometimes. Birthday cards, Christmas cards, generic printed messages with her signature, no personal notes, just acknowledgement that we're related even if we're not really family anymore. I don't send cards back. Marcus says she had a baby, my granddaughter, named after Robert's mother. He showed me pictures, a beautiful baby with Crystal's eyes. I felt something, not the rush of love I felt with my other grandchildren, but a distant sadness for a relationship that will never exist. "She wants you to meet the baby," Marcus said carefully. "What do you think I should do?" "Do whatever lets you sleep at night, Mama. You don't owe Crystal anything." I haven't met the baby, haven't reached out. Maybe I'm being stubborn. Maybe years from now I'll regret this. But I made my peace with it. Some betrayals are too deep to bridge. Some relationships, once broken, should stay broken. I sit on my porch sometimes, the porch now restored to look the way it did when Robert and I first bought this place. I look at this house we sacrificed so much for. And I think about legacy, about what we leave behind. Robert and I thought we were leaving our children a house, financial security, something solid. But what we really left them was a test of character. What matters more, money or family? Marcus and Teresa chose family. Crystal chose wrong. And maybe that's the real legacy. Not the house itself, but what it revealed about my children's hearts. I'm at peace with that, with knowing the truth, even though it hurts. The house is mine again, but it cost me a daughter. Some nights I wonder if I should have just let her have it, avoided the whole ugly battle. But then I remember, it wasn't about the house. It was about not rewarding betrayal, about teaching my children there are consequences for cruelty. I'm 74. I don't know how many years I have left, but I'll spend them in this house. The house Robert and I built a life in. The house that tested my children and revealed their true hearts. Not because it's worth $500,000, but because it's mine. Because Robert and I earned it. Because some things are worth fighting for. Even when it costs your own child. People ask if I have regrets. I tell them yes. I regret trusting too easily. I regret not reading those papers more carefully. I regret raising a daughter who could see an opportunity instead of a person. But I don't regret fighting back. Don't regret exposing her lies. Don't regret cutting her out when she showed me who she was. Because this house isn't just wood and brick. It's proof that I didn't let betrayal break me, that I stood up for myself, that even at 74, even after losing my husband, even after my own daughter tried to destroy me, I'm still here, still standing, still strong. The house my daughter stole is mine again. And this time, I'll never let it go.